Ambassador Kim Dae-ho stood tall in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council. The massive chamber stretched up into darkness, with floating lights that looked like stars. Hundreds of alien representatives sat in rising circles around him. Their whispers echoed off the polished stone walls. Kim adjusted his formal Earth uniform and tried to stay calm. After 5 years as Earth's ambassador, he knew how to handle difficult meetings. But today felt different. The air itself seemed heavy with tension. Council leader Han Sujai, a tall Artaxian with silvery skin, stood at the high podium. Her 4 eyes looked down at Kim with what he thought was disgust. Next to her, Military Commander Park Jin of the Valaxian Empire crossed his muscular arms. His red scales gleamed under the starlight. The Council has reviewed Earth's application for full membership, Han Suji announced. Her voice carried through the chamber without any need for speakers. We have concerns. Kim nodded politely. Earth is ready to address any concerns the Council may have. Commander Park stepped forward. Your species are cowards. His words hit Kim like a physical blow. We have studied your military history. You hide behind weapons that strike from far away. You use machines to fight your battles. You avoid honorable combat. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Kim's hands tightened into fists, but he kept them behind his back where no one could see. That is not true, Kim said carefully. Humans have a long history of brave warriors. Brave? Park laughed, and many council members joined him. Your soldiers sit in bunkers and press buttons. They pilot drones from safe distances. They launch missiles from ships that hide beneath the waves. Where is the courage in that? Kim thought of his brother, who had died defending civilians during the Singapore crisis. He thought of the Medal of Honor winners he had met, and the veterans who still carried the scars of their service. With respect, Commander, Kim said, keeping his voice steady, courage is not measured by how close you stand to your enemy. It is measured by what you are willing to sacrifice to protect others. Pretty words, Han Suji said, but the Council needs more than words. Humanity claims to be ready for full membership, yet you show none of the warrior spirit that earned the other races their places here. Kim looked around the chamber. He saw the warrior races, the Valaxians with their scales and claws, the Artaxians with their enhanced strength, the Morrican with their natural armor. All of them had proven themselves in combat before joining the Council. The Council has made its decision, Han Suji declared. Earth's application for full membership is denied. You may reapply in 50 years if your species has learned to fight with honor by then. The chamber erupted in sounds of approval. Kim stood straight and proud, even as the insults rained down around him. His communicator buzzed silently in his pocket. Earth Command would be getting the bad news in real time. As Kim turned to leave, Commander Park called out, "Unless, of course, humanity wants to prove us wrong." His tone was mocking. The Valaxian Empire hosts combat trials every solar cycle. Send your best warrior, if you have any true warriors left. Kim stopped at the chamber doors. He didn't turn around, but his voice carried clearly. Humanity has warriors you cannot imagine, Commander. Be careful what you ask for. The doors closed behind him with a deep boom. In the private transport pod back to the Earth Embassy, Kim finally let his hands shake. He pulled out his communicator and contacted Earth Command. "Send me everything we have on Navy SEALs," he said. "The Council wants to see a true human warrior. Then let's show them one they'll never forget." As his pod streaked through the artificial sky of Centauri Prime, Kim smiled for the first time that day. The Council thought humans were cowards because they fought smart instead of just fighting hard. They were about to learn that the most dangerous predator in the galaxy was the one that used both brain and brawn. They wanted a warrior. Earth would send them a SEAL. And then they would learn why humans had survived every challenge their harsh planet had thrown at them. The meeting room at Earth Command headquarters was silent. On the large screen, Ambassador Kim's report had just finished playing. 20 of Earth's highest-ranking military officers sat around the table, their faces showing different levels of anger and concern. Admiral Yoon Do-won, head of Special Operations Command, was the first to speak. "They called us cowards." His voice was quiet, but everyone could hear the steel in it. "After all humanity has survived, the Galactic Council believes that fighting at close range is the only way to show courage," Kim's hologram explained. "They see our use of technology and long-range weapons as weakness." General Lee Min-soo slammed her hand on the table. "Then they know nothing about true warfare, or true courage." The room erupted in heated discussion. Some wanted to withdraw from the Galactic Council completely. Others suggested showing the aliens Earth's full military might. A few even laughed at the idea of close combat in an age of space warfare. In the corner of the room, a figure stood quietly watching. Master Chief Lee Hyun had been invited to the meeting because of his extensive combat experience. As a Navy SEAL with 15 years of service, he had seen more action than most people in the room. "What about the combat trials?" Lee asked, his voice cutting through the argument. Everyone turned to look at him. The Valaxian commander mentioned them. "What exactly are they?" Ambassador Kim's hologram flickered. "The trials are held on the Valaxian homeworld. Warriors from across the galaxy compete in various combat challenges. The finals are one-on-one fights." "Hand-to-hand?" Lee asked. "Mostly. Some weapons are allowed, but no ranged weapons. No guns. No explosives." Kim paused. "No one from Earth has ever competed." Lee stepped forward into the light. His face showed no emotion, but his eyes were intense. "Then maybe it's time we did." Admiral Yoon studied Lee carefully. "You're volunteering?" "Yes, sir." Lee stood at attention. "I studied Valaxian combat techniques. Their strength is impressive, but they're overconfident. They've never faced someone trained in human special operations." General Lee Min-soo shook her head. "It's too risky. If you lose, it will confirm their opinion of us." "And if I win," Lee countered, "it proves that humans are warriors worthy of respect. That we can fight any way we need to." The room fell silent again. Everyone looked at the Master Chief. They knew his record. He had rescued hostages in impossible situations, led teams through the worst conditions Earth could create, survived things that should have killed him. Admiral Yoon stood up. "I've worked with Master Chief Lee for 10 years. If anyone can show the galaxy what human warriors are capable of, it's him." Ambassador Kim's hologram nodded. "The Valaxians respect actions more than words. One victory in their arena would be worth years of diplomatic talks." "There's something else," Lee said. All eyes turned to him again. "They think we're cowards because we fight smart instead of just fighting hard. I'll show them that the most dangerous warrior is the one who does both." General Lee Min-soo finally smiled. "You understand that you'll be alone there. No backup. No support team." "With respect, ma'am," Lee replied, "Navy SEALs are never alone. We carry the training and experience of every operator who came before us. That's something the aliens don't understand yet." Admiral Yoon looked around the room. One by one, the other officers nodded. "Then it's decided. Master Chief Lee Hyun will represent Earth in the Valaxian combat trials." "I'll need 3 months to prepare," Lee said, "and access to all our data on alien combat styles." "You'll have whatever you need," Admiral Yoon promised. "Earth is counting on you, Master Chief." Lee's face remained calm, but there was a slight gleam in his eyes. "They want to see a human warrior up close. I'll give them a closer look than they ever wanted." As the meeting ended, Ambassador Kim's hologram spoke one last time. "The trials begin in 4 months. Good luck, Master Chief. Show them what humanity is really made of." Lee nodded once and left the room. He had training to do, and a galaxy to prove wrong about human courage. The morning sun had not yet risen when Lee Hyun dove into the cold ocean. This was his 100th day of training, and he hadn't missed a single morning swim. The water was his home, just as it was for all SEALs. On the beach, Admiral Yoon watched through binoculars. Next to him stood Kang, the advanced ad training assistant shaped like a small floating sphere. Its blue light pulsed as it tracked Lee's movements. His swimming speed has improved by 23% since training began, Kang reported. He can now match the average speed of a Valaxian in water. Admiral Yoon nodded. Good. They think their natural strength gives them the advantage. They don't understand that humans get stronger through hard work. Lee emerged from the water an hour later. Without pausing to rest, he began his hand-to-hand combat training. His opponent was a hologram created by Kang, a perfect copy of a Valaxian warrior. Begin combat simulation, Kang announced. The hologram charged at Lee. The seal didn't try to match the alien's strength. Instead, he moved like water, flowing around the attack. His counterstrike hit exactly where a Valaxian's nerve cluster would be. The hologram flickered. Excellent, Admiral Yoon called out. You've learned their weak points well. Lee nodded but didn't stop. He moved through 5 more combat simulations, each one harder than the last. By the end, sweat covered his body, but his breathing remained steady. Your technique has improved significantly, Kang said. But the real Valaxians will be stronger than these simulations. Strength isn't everything, Lee replied. He picked up a practice staff, similar to the weapons used in the trials. Run the weapon drills. For the next 2 hours, Lee practiced with every weapon allowed in the arena. He had studied ancient human martial arts and combined them with modern combat techniques. The result was a fighting style no alien had ever seen. Inside the training facility, Lee sat cross-legged on the floor. Around him, screens showed videos of past combat trials. He watched every move, every technique used by different alien species. Most competitors rely on their natural advantages, Admiral Yoon explained. The Valaxians use their strength. The Artaxians use their speed. The Moricans use their armor. And what will I use? Lee asked, though he already knew the answer. Everything, Admiral Yoon said. Your mind, your training, your experience. A SEAL uses whatever works. Lee stood up and walked to the simulation room. This was the hardest part of his training. Kang would recreate the exact conditions of the Valaxian arena. The gravity, the air pressure, the temperature. Ready for pain tolerance training, Kang announced. Lee took a deep breath. Begin. For the next hour, he fought through situations that would break most humans. The gravity increased until his bones felt like they would crack. The temperature swung from freezing to burning. Through it all, he kept fighting. Enough, Admiral Yoon finally called. You've done well today. Lee shook his head. Not enough. The real trials will be worse. You push yourself too hard, Kang observed. That's what humans do, Lee said. We push past our limits. Then we make new limits. Then we break those too. Admiral Yoon smiled. The aliens think human bodies are weak. They don't understand that our true strength is in never giving up. As the sun set, Lee stood at the beach again. His body was tired, but his mind was sharp. He thought about the challenge ahead, about what it meant for Earth. Tomorrow we'll train with live Valaxian weapons, Admiral Yoon said. Are you ready? Lee watched the waves crash on the shore. Like the ocean, he was calm on the surface but held tremendous power underneath. I'm ready. When I enter that arena, I won't just be fighting for myself. I'll be fighting for Earth. Kang's light pulsed. Based on your progress, your chances of survival are now 58.3%. Lee actually smiled. That's better odds than most SEAL missions I've been on. He turned to walk back to his quarters. Tomorrow would bring more training, more pain, more growth. The aliens thought humans were weak because they hadn't seen what a human could become through training and determination. Soon, they would learn. The Valaxian sun burned red in the sky as Lee's transport ship landed at the capital city's spaceport. The air was thicker than Earth's, and the gravity pulled at his bones. But after 3 months of training in simulated conditions, his body was ready. A small group waited for him at the landing pad. Lee recognized Choi Mi-rae from his briefing files. She was Earth's cultural expert, half human and half Valaxian, with dark hair and slight scaling on her neck. Next to her stood several large Valaxian warriors, their red scales gleaming in the sunlight. Master Chief Lee. Choi greeted him with a slight bow. "Welcome to Valaxia Prime." Lee nodded in return. He carried only one small bag, a seal-traveled light. The Valaxian warriors looked at his simple black uniform with obvious contempt. "This is the human warrior." One of them laughed. He looked so soft. Choi's expression didn't change, but Lee saw worry in her eyes. "This is Krav, the assistant combat master. He will show you to your quarters." As they walked through the city, Lee studied everything. The buildings were built for creatures larger and stronger than humans. The doors were massive, the corridors wide. Everything was designed to impress and intimidate. "The combat trials begin tomorrow," Krav said. 20 warriors have entered. Most won't survive the first day." He grinned, showing sharp teeth. "Humans are known for being smart. Was it smart to come here?" "We'll find out," Lee replied calmly. In his quarters, Choi gave him a quick briefing. "The other competitors are already calling you the soft one. They think you'll be an easy victory." "Good," Lee said. "Let them think that." "There's more." Choi lowered her voice. "Some of the council members are here. They're betting heavily against you. If you win, many important people will lose money." Lee unpacked his bag. Inside was a small holoprojector that displayed Kang's familiar blue light. "Then they'll lose money." A loud horn echoed through the city. "That's the call for the opening ceremony," Choi explained. "All warriors must attend." The ceremony was held in a massive arena. Thousands of aliens filled the seats, their voices creating a storm of noise. 20 warriors stood in the center, each from a different species. Lee was the smallest by far. Commander Park Jin stood on a high platform. "Warriors, you have come to prove your worth in combat. Only one will leave as champion." His eyes fixed on Lee. "Some of you clearly don't belong here." The crowd laughed. Lee remained still, his face calm, but his eyes never left Commander Park. As is tradition, each warrior must demonstrate their strength before the trials begin. Krav announced, "You will break these stone blocks with your bare hands." The blocks were brought out, each one as big as a small car. The other warriors stepped forward one by one, smashing the stones with impressive shows of force. The crowd cheered each time. Finally, it was Lee's turn. The crowd went quiet, waiting to see the human fail. Lee walked to his stone block. He studied it for a moment, then placed his hand at a specific point. With a quick, precise strike, he hit the block. Nothing seemed to happen. The crowd began to laugh. Then, slowly, a crack appeared where Lee had struck. The crack spread, following the natural fault lines in the stone. Within seconds, the entire block split into perfect halves. The laughter stopped. Lee turned to Krav. "On Earth, we learned that the strongest blow isn't always the best. Sometimes you just need to know where to hit." Choi smiled slightly. Commander Park's face darkened. In the crowd, Lee heard whispers of surprise and confusion. "The trials begin at dawn," Commander Park announced. "We will see if clever tricks can stand against true warrior strength." As they left the arena, Choi walked beside Lee. "That was impressive. But tomorrow will be much harder." "I know," Lee said. "That's why I'm here." He looked up at the red sun, thinking of Earth and everything he represented. They want to see human strength. Tomorrow, they'll see what a seal can do. The first day of trials began before the red sun rose. Lee stood with the other warriors in a large underground chamber. The walls were made of rough stone, and old bloodstains marked the floor. "First trial, survival combat," Krav announced. "Each warrior must fight 3 opponents. Any weapons in the weapon rack may be used. Victory comes by surrender or, he smiled darkly, inability to continue. Lee studied the weapon rack. There were spears, swords, clubs, and several weapons he didn't recognize. All were sized for creatures larger than humans. The soft one goes first, Commander Park called from his viewing platform. Let's see how long he lasts. Lee stepped into the fighting circle. His first opponent was a young Valaxian warrior, eager to make a name for himself. The alien grabbed a heavy club and charged. But Lee wasn't there anymore. He moved like water, just as he had practiced thousands of times. The Valaxian's momentum carried him forward, off balance. Lee struck 3 precise points on the alien's back. The Valaxian fell, his legs no longer working. What did you do to me?" the young warrior gasped. "Nerve clusters," Lee explained quietly. "You'll be able to move again in an hour." The crowd was silent. This wasn't the kind of combat they were used to. Lee's second opponent was more careful. The Morrican warrior wore natural armor and carried 2 short swords. He attacked with skill and patience. For 5 minutes, they fought. The Morrican's blades came closer each time, but Lee watched, learned, and waited. He saw how the alien's armor plates moved, noticed the small gaps between them. When Lee finally struck, it was too fast to see clearly. His fingers found the pressure points between the armor plates. The Morrican's arms went numb, and his swords clattered to the ground. "Impossible," the Morrican said as he surrendered. "No one can find those weak points so quickly." "Seals are trained to observe and adapt," Lee replied. "Every armor has a weakness." The third fight was different. His opponent was a massive creature that seemed made of pure muscle. It didn't bother with weapons. It just tried to crush Lee with its huge hands. This time, Lee went to the weapon rack. He chose a light spear, one the other warriors had ignored because it seemed too weak. The crowd laughed at his choice. The giant creature swung its arms like tree trunks. But Lee used its strength against it, letting momentum carry his opponent off balance. The light spear moved like a surgeon's tool, striking nerve points and pressure spots. Within 2 minutes, the huge alien lay on the ground, unable to move its limbs. "What kind of fighting is this?" Krav demanded. "Where is the strength, the power?" "This is how humans fight," Lee said, helping his opponent sit up. "We use knowledge as well as strength. Every strike has a purpose." In the crowd, Lee saw some younger aliens watching with interest. They were warriors in training, not yet fully committed to the old ways of fighting. Commander Park's voice boomed through the chamber. "Impressive tricks, human. But tricks won't help you in the real trials tomorrow. These were just warm-up matches." "He's right," Choi said quietly as she brought Lee water. "Tomorrow will be much worse. They'll put you against their champions." Lee nodded. "Good. Then they'll learn something else about humans." "What's that?" "The harder things get, the more dangerous we become." As they left the chamber, Lee heard the younger aliens talking excitedly about his fighting style. Some were trying to copy his movements. "You've confused them," Choi said. "They expected you to try to match their strength and fail. Instead, you showed them a completely different way of fighting." "That's the point," Lee replied. "Humans survived on Earth because we learned to fight smarter, not just harder. Tomorrow, they'll see even more." In his quarters that night, Lee reviewed the day's fights with Kang. The AI helped him plan for tomorrow's bigger challenges. The real test was still to come, but Lee had made his point. Humans were far from weak. They were just strong in ways the aliens had never imagined. The main arena was packed with thousands of spectators. The red sun beat down on the sandy floor where only 8 warriors remained from the original 20. Lee stood among them, his black uniform dusty but intact. "The real tournament begins now," Commander Park announced. "No more practice fights. 4 battles will decide who reaches the semifinals." Choi approached Lee with a worried look. "They've changed the rules. Each fight now has different conditions. They're trying to make sure you fail." Lee nodded calmly. They can change the rules. I'll adapt. First match, Crab shouted. The human against Dox, the destroyer. A huge warrior stepped forward. His skin was thick like stone, and his arms were as big as Lee's whole body. The crowd cheered. Dox was a famous champion who had never lost. Special condition, Commander Park said with a smile. The gravity will be doubled. Let's see how the human handles that. Lee felt the change immediately. His body became twice as heavy. Even breathing was harder. Dox seemed unaffected by the change. Begin. Dox charged like a bulldozer. Under double gravity, Lee couldn't dodge as quickly as before. The alien's fist caught him in the side, sending him rolling across the sand. The crowd roared with approval. Commander Park smiled wider. But Lee got up. His training with Kang had prepared him for this. He had practiced fighting under 3 times Earth's gravity. This was hard, but not impossible. Still standing, Dox laughed. You'll learn to stay down. Lee didn't waste energy talking. He watched Dox move, noting how the heavy gravity affected the alien's balance. Even stone-like skin had to follow the laws of physics. When Dox charged again, Lee was ready. He moved just enough to avoid the main force of the attack. His hand struck specific points on Dox's joints, places where the increased gravity put extra stress. Dox stumbled. He tried to turn, but his own weight worked against him. Lee struck again and again, using precise hits that grew more effective under double gravity. What's happening? Someone in the crowd shouted. The human is winning. Dox fell to one knee. His stone-like skin didn't matter when his joints couldn't support his weight. Lee moved in for the final strikes. I surrender, Dox gasped. Before you break something permanently. The gravity returned to normal. The crowd was silent with shock. Commander Park's smile was gone. Second match, Krav announced quickly. The human against Vex the Quick. Special condition. Combat in total darkness. Lee had barely caught his breath when the arena went completely dark. He heard fast footsteps circling him. His new opponent was known for incredible speed. But seals trained for darkness. Lee closed his eyes, using his other senses. He heard the slight whisper of movement, felt the vibrations in the sand. The fight was shorter than the first. When the lights came back on, Vex lay unconscious, and Lee stood calmly in the same spot. Third match, against Kor the Wise. Special condition. Underwater combat. Lee actually smiled at this one. They thought fighting underwater would be a disadvantage for him. They didn't know that water was a seal's true home. The arena filled with water. Kor had gills and webbed hands, but Lee moved through the water like he was born to it. The fight lasted less than 2 minutes. Final match of the day. Commander Park's voice was tight with anger. Against Mav the Untouchable. Special condition. Poison gas in the arena. Lee pulled up his uniform collar, which contained a carbon filter, standard SEAL equipment. Mav had a natural immunity to poison, but it didn't help him when Lee's elbow found the pressure point behind his skull. 4 fights, 4 victories. No one in the arena could believe it. The semifinals begin tomorrow. Krav announced to the silent crowd. The human has qualified. As Lee walked out of the arena, he heard the younger aliens talking excitedly. They weren't cheering for his strength or power. They were amazed by his ability to adapt, to overcome every challenge. They're starting to understand, Choi said as she handed him water. Humans don't need natural advantages. We make our own. Lee looked up at Commander Park's angry face. Tomorrow will be even harder. Are you worried? No, Lee said. I'm just getting started. Late that night, Lee sat in his quarters cleaning a small cut on his arm. The day's fights had been hard, but he was ready for tomorrow's semifinals. Suddenly, he heard quick footsteps in the hallway. Choi burst into his room, her face worried. We have a problem. I just overheard Commander Park talking to some of the other officials. What did you hear? Lee asked, staying calm as his SEAL training kicked in. They're planning to make sure you don't win tomorrow. Choi spoke quickly and quietly. They've bet too much money against you. And some council members are angry that you're making their warriors look bad. Lee nodded. He had expected something like this. What's their plan? They're going to poison your water during the semifinal match. Not enough to kill you, but enough to make you weak and slow. Choi pulled out a small data device. I recorded their conversation. Lee played the recording. He heard Commander Park's voice clearly. The human has embarrassed us enough. Tomorrow, he learns his place. We should report this to the tournament judges, Choi said. The judges work for Commander Park, Lee replied. We need proof they can't ignore. Just then, Kang's blue light appeared from the holoprojector. I can help with that. My sensors detected unusual chemical signatures in the arena's water supply system. Lee stood up. Show me. They sneaked through the dark corridors of the arena complex. Kang led them to a small room filled with pipes and tanks. There, the AI said. That tank contains the water supply for tomorrow's matches. My scans show it's already been tampered with. Lee examined the tank carefully. They did this early to avoid suspicion tomorrow. He pulled out a small device from his pocket, a chemical analyzer all SEALs carried. What are you going to do? Choi asked. First, we're going to get proof. Lee took samples of the poisoned water. Then, we're going to give Commander Park a surprise. They worked quietly for the next hour. Lee used his SEAL equipment to collect evidence and prepare his counterplan. Choi kept watch, while Kang monitored the security systems. Someone's coming, Choi whispered suddenly. They hid behind large pipes as two Valaxian guards walked past. The guards checked the water tank and smiled. The human won't be so quick tomorrow, one guard said. If he even makes it to the arena, the other laughed. After the guards left, Lee finished his work. There. Now we wait. The next morning, the arena was fuller than ever. Everyone wanted to see the semifinals. 4 warriors remained. Lee, 2 Valaxian champions, and a Morrican elite fighter. First semifinal match, Krav announced. The human against Champion Rock. Before the fight began, Commander Park spoke. As is tradition, both warriors will drink from the champion's cup to show their courage. A large cup of water was brought out. Lee saw the slight smile on Commander Park's face, but Lee had his own plan. He stepped forward confidently and took the cup. On Earth, we have a tradition too. The challenged warrior drinks first, and the challenger drinks second. Commander Park's smile faltered. That's not our way. Are you saying Earth's traditions don't matter? Lee asked loudly. The crowd murmured. I thought the council believed in respecting all cultures. Trapped by his own words, Commander Park nodded stiffly. Very well. Champion Rock will drink first. The large Valaxian warrior took the cup. But before he could drink, Lee spoke again. One more Earth tradition, he said clearly. We always test what we drink. For safety, he held up his chemical analyzer. This shows the water contains muscle-weakening poison. The crowd gasped. Lee played Choi's recording for everyone to hear. Then he showed the proof he had collected the night before. Commander Park's face turned dark with rage. But it was too late. The evidence was clear. Several council members stood up, demanding answers. The semifinals will be postponed until this matter is investigated, a senior judge announced. As the arena erupted in chaos, Choi smiled at Lee. You knew they would try something like this. SEALs are trained to expect the unexpected, Lee replied, and to turn enemy plans against them. He looked up at Commander Park, who was now surrounded by angry council members. Tomorrow, we fight fair. And then they'll learn another lesson about humans. What's that? We don't need to cheat to win. After the poison scandal, the tournament changed. The council sent new judges to oversee the matches. Commander Park was no longer in charge, though he watched from the highest seats with dark eyes. The semifinals were quick. Li defeated his opponent with the same careful skill he had shown before. In the other match, the champion everyone feared stepped forward. Kill the undefeated. Kill was different from the other warriors. He was older, more experienced, and had never lost a fight in 20 years. He won his semi-final match in less than a minute. Be careful, Choi told Li as they waited for the final match. Kill is not like the others. He actually studies his opponents. Li nodded. He had watched Kill fight. The alien champion was smart, patient, and incredibly strong. This would be the real test. The arena was completely full for the final match. Even the Galactic Council members were there. This was no longer just about the tournament. It was about proving what humans could do. Kill approached Li before the match. I've watched you fight, human. You're not what we expected. Is that a good thing? Li asked. We'll find out. Kill smiled, showing teeth that had been filed to points. I won't underestimate you like the others did. The fight began without any special conditions. Just two warriors facing each other on the sand. Kill moved first, faster than someone his size should be able to move. But he didn't charge wildly. He tested Li's defenses, looking for weaknesses. Li blocked and dodged, but some hits got through. Each blow felt like being hit by a truck. His ribs screamed in pain. You're already hurt, Kill said. Surrender now and keep your dignity. Li didn't waste breath answering. He watched Kill's movements, learning his patterns. The alien was good, very good, but he still had patterns. The fight went on. 10 minutes passed. 20. Neither warrior could gain a clear advantage. The crowd watched in silence, amazed by the display of skill. Then Kill landed a heavy blow to Li's side. Li fell to one knee. The crowd gasped. Stay down, Kill advised. You've proved humans are worthy warriors. That's enough. But Li remembered his SEAL training. He remembered all the times humans had been told to stay down, to accept their limits. He remembered Earth waiting for news of this fight. Li stood up. Kill nodded with respect and attacked again. But now Li saw something new. The alien was breathing harder. His movements were slightly slower. That's when Li understood. Valaxians were incredibly strong, but they weren't used to long fights. They depended on winning quickly. Li had trained for endurance his whole career. SEALs could fight for hours if they had to. Now he had a plan. The next 10 minutes were the hardest of Li's life. He took hits that would have broken a normal human, but he kept moving, kept fighting, kept making Kill work. Slowly, the alien champion began to tire. His attacks became slower. His breathing got heavier. That's when Li struck. His hands moved in the same patterns he had practiced thousands of times. He hit nerve clusters and pressure points that even Kill didn't know he had. The alien champion tried to block, but his tired muscles couldn't react fast enough. Li's strikes came faster and faster. Finally, Kill fell to his knees. He tried to stand but couldn't. How? He gasped. How are you still fighting? Because humans never stop, Li said quietly. No matter how hard it gets, we keep going. The arena was completely silent as Kill bowed his head. I surrender, he said clearly. The human is the victor. The crowd exploded in cheers. Even the council members stood and applauded. Li had done more than win a fight. He had changed how the galaxy saw humans. Choi ran to help Li stand. You did it. You actually did it. Li looked up at Commander Park's angry face, then at the cheering crowd. No, he said. We did it. All of humanity did it. They just didn't know it until now. 1 month after the tournament, Li stood once again in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council. This time, he wasn't alone. Admiral Yoon and Ambassador Kim stood with him, along with Choi, and surprisingly, Kill the former champion. Council leader Han Sujayat looked different now. Her 4 eyes showed respect instead of contempt when she looked at Li. The council has reviewed the events of the combat trials, she announced. We have come to several conclusions. The chamber was packed with representatives from every species. Many of the younger aliens wore training clothes similar to Li's simple black uniform. First, Han Suji continued, "We acknowledge that we were wrong about humans. Your victory, Master Chief Li, proved that courage comes in many forms." Commander Park shifted uncomfortably in his seat. After the poison scandal, he had lost much of his power and influence. Second, Han Suji said, "The Council has voted. Earth is granted full membership in the Galactic Alliance, effective immediately." Ambassador Kim bowed deeply. Admiral Yoon smiled proudly. "But there is more." Han Suji raised her voice. "Kill, the former champion, has made an unprecedented request." Kill stepped forward. His wounds from the final battle had healed, but he moved with new respect for human fighting techniques. "I ask that Master Chief Li establish a training program," Kill announced, "to teach warriors of all species the human ways of combat. Not just their techniques, but their way of thinking." The chamber erupted in excited whispers. Nothing like this had ever happened before. "I have learned," Hill continued, "that true strength is not just in muscle and bone. It is in adapting, in thinking, in never giving up. Humans have mastered this. We can learn from them." Li looked at Admiral Yoon, who nodded. "I would be honored," Li said. "But I have conditions." "Name them," Han Suji said. "The training will be open to all species, not just warriors. And we will teach more than just fighting. We'll teach human problem-solving, human adaptability, and human determination." "Agreed," Han Suji said immediately. "The Council will provide whatever resources you need." Choi stepped forward with a datapad. "We already have over 500 applications from young warriors who want to train with Li." "Not just warriors," a voice called out. A young Artaxian scientist stood up. "Some of us want to learn how humans think, how they solve problems, how they keep going when things seem impossible." Li smiled. This was more than just a victory in combat. This was a chance to show the galaxy what humans were really capable of. "There's one more thing," Admiral Yoon announced. "Earth is sending more instructors. Not just SEALs, but other special forces, scientists, and teachers. We will share what made humanity strong." The chamber filled with approving sounds. Even some of the older council members who had doubted humans were nodding in agreement. Later, at the celebration, Choi found Li watching the mixed crowd of aliens and humans talking excitedly about the future. "You did more than win a tournament," she said. "You changed how the galaxy sees humans, and how they see themselves." Li nodded. He watched a group of young aliens practicing human fighting stances. They weren't trying to copy strength. They were learning to think and adapt like humans. "Commander Park said humans were cowards because we fight smart instead of just fighting hard," Li said. "Now they understand that being smart makes us stronger, not weaker." Kill joined them, carrying 3 drinks. "To the future," he said, raising his glass, "where all species learn from each other's strengths." As they celebrated, Li thought about all the humans who had come before him. The ones who had survived on Earth by being clever, by adapting, by never giving up. They had prepared humanity for the galaxy without even knowing it. "One human warrior changed everything," Choi said. "No," Li corrected her. "One human warrior just showed them what all humans are capable of. The galaxy wasn't ready for us. Now they are." Above them, Earth's flag flew next to the Galactic Council banner, finally in its rightful place among the stars.